I'm Aryeh Schwartz along with Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. Our next guest has been around basketball her whole life, collecting many awards on her way to winning a national championship with Purdue and playing in the W. When the playing career ended, she jumped right into coaching multiple college teams and WNBA teams. She was part of the 2012 champion Indiana Fever coaching staff. Our next guest, the head coach of the Connecticut Sun, Steph White. Our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content at winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com. If you're looking for a fun new way to watch WNBA games, or heck, even college or AU games, look no further. Winsidr hosts watch parties on Playback. They're simple, they're fun, and they're a great way to enjoy women's basketball. The link is playback.tv/Winsidr. That's playback.tv/Winsidr. Welcome back to the Winsidr Show. I'm very excited for this one. It's always an honor, a privilege, and honestly a big deal anytime we get to talk with elite basketball minds, and that's what you are when you are a WNBA head coach. Steph White's joining the show today, and all of our WNBA listeners, longtime fans, know you from your playing career, your coaching career. You clearly grew up in a basketball mecca of Indiana. Can you just share with us, how did you get into the game? When did you start playing?
Yeah, it's always an interesting story because I have a picture when I was first born. My dad was holding me in one hand and a basketball in the other. So it's literally been in my DNA since I was born. But growing up in Indiana, like every family get together, every sporting event, every holiday winds up in a pickup basketball game, and so it's kind of a birthright when you grow up in the country, especially in the state of Indiana.
So true. So true. And so, I mean, we could talk about your accolades. We could talk about everything you accomplished. 1995, Indiana Miss Basketball, Gatorade National Player of the Year, USA Today National Player of the Year, Wade Trophy winner. You go on to lead Purdue to a national championship. I think, what was it, 99? Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's right.
Then you went and played. I'm right on that? Okay, good.
Mhm.
Played 5 years in the league, 4 with the Fever. I mean, I just kind of want to say, I mean, I'm glossing over a lot of time here, but what is some of the most memorable moments from even just high school to your professional career? I mean, clearly, I would imagine you'll talk about that national championship, of course.
Yeah, for sure. Certainly in winning Indiana Miss Basketball, when you grow up in the state and you see that jersey worn by so many amazing players, men and women that played basketball in the state, it's what your individual goal is. So winning Indiana Miss Basketball was huge. We never won a state championship, but I played in the single class system in Indiana basketball, and I wouldn't change that, for the world. I don't remember how many games we won. I think we lost 9 total games in my whole high school career. And 4 of those were to schools that eventually went on to the Final Four and competing for a state championship. So I really enjoyed that high school experience of playing in a one class system. I know often folks don't agree with that, but I certainly loved it. And being able to go to college and be in a situation to win Big Ten championships, and the national championship obviously is just the highlight of my career. Not just because we won a national championship, but because of how it happened. I played for 3 coaches in 4 years. We had complete roster turnover after my freshman year. Yukari Figs, my teammate and great friend, we didn't really know what was going to happen with our career after that happened. And for us to be playing for and winning a national championship 3 years later, it was just really special. And it was special how it happened. It was special with the group that we were able to do it with. It was special because when we came to Purdue, that was our goal, to win a national championship. And so that will always be a highlight of my life because of the life experience that it taught me, and a highlight of my career from a basketball standpoint. And then certainly being able to wear the Indiana Fever uniform, to be able to culminate all three levels for me of basketball in my home state, and to be a part of the first WNBA championship for the Indiana Fever. I was missing that state championship, but getting an NBA or WNBA championship and getting a collegiate championship in my home state was really special.
Well, and we didn't even plan this, but just hearing you talk through this, it made me think like coming up in such a basketball centric place, but not necessarily that had, I mean, the W wasn't always around. What was that like growing up, and then watching the W kind of, I wouldn't say appear out of nowhere, but like, I would assume when you were a little kid, you weren't dreaming of the W because it wasn't around.
Right. And we didn't have social media at the time, right? The internet wasn't even available then, so it kind of did appear out of nowhere for us. It was just one of those things where, you think you're going to play college basketball and then life is going to be over unless you decide to go overseas. And at the time that wasn't, something that I had really wanted to do. So playing in college was the ultimate goal. And then when I got to college, the ABL was around, and for the young listeners who don't remember the ABL, that was one of the professional leagues that was in my lifetime before the WNBA. Of course, there were multiple other leagues that tried to start up that just didn't pan out, and the ABL was another one of those leagues. I mean, some of the best players to ever play the game played in the ABL, and I think it was, I don't know, year 2, 3, something like that, of the ABL. Then the WNBA was coming to fruition. I may have been a sophomore in college, I think, when it first started. And so I think the option to potentially play after college was finally there. And that was an exciting time. There were a lot of question marks. How was it going to last? Could it really get off the ground? What was it going to look like? There were some exciting cities, and it was just a really exciting time for me. And then when I graduated college, that was the year that the ABL folded. So both of the leagues came together. I mean, for me, I was in the same draft, and drafted to the same team as Dawn Staley. And I played my rookie year in Charlotte. Dawn was the first pick for Charlotte in that draft. I was the second pick for Charlotte in that draft. And, you walk into training camp and your teammates with Dawn Staley and Tracy Reed and Vicky Bullitt and Rhonda Mapp and Andrea Stenson. I mean, some of the greatest college players that I grew up watching. Was really pretty incredible.
Okay, oh my gosh, there's so many things I want to talk about right now. Okay, I'm going to bring it back to Indiana Miss Basketball, because it's interesting. I grew up in Illinois, and it was only until I moved to Indiana and I was coaching collegiately there that I really realized the culture of what Miss Basketball means, the culture of basketball in the state. I mean, there's kind of this, like, at least for us, there was this kind of competitiveness between Illinois and Indiana. But after living there for 3 years and kind of experiencing it, it's like, okay, wow, Indiana really is that culture. So it's really cool to hear you kind of just talk about that growing up and just what that, it's in every family, it's in every home. There's a hoop in every single driveway. So amazing to kind of hear you talk about. But then I kind of want to talk about, you know, you talked about playing with the Fever. You've been able to even get your, I believe, collegiate coaching start was in Indiana. Fun fact, here's a really funny story. I've actually never shared this with you. I was an assistant at Ball State, and I think we had the same office. And I remember one of my first few days, I would just get these phone calls constantly on the landline phone. And I would answer it and be like, hey, is this Steph White? And I was like, what? Is that not the most random thing? I'm like,
that is.
No, Steph White coached here. I had no idea. So yeah, I used to get phone calls all the time. In my office. Apparently we had the same office. Fun fact.
That's random.
But, I want to, before we fully dive into the WNBA, what was that like for you? I mean, to have so much of your career, clearly high school, we've talked about that. You go into Purdue, you get your coaching start in the state, and then professionally with the Fever and everything you just kind of talked about, playing with them to coaching with them. So much of your career has been able to be in that state and locally. How special has that been for you?
It's been really special, and for a number of reasons. One, it's just the history of basketball in the state of Indiana. That kind of I guess when you grow up in the Midwest speaks for itself. There are many people that I've met along my career that don't quite understand what basketball means in the state. And my favorite movie is Hoosiers, as is I think almost every basketball player from the state of Indiana.
Of course.
But also because I got to share it with so many people. I mean, when you grow up in a small town in Indiana, our high school basketball games were literally community outings. It was like everybody in our county was there,
So true.
and our gyms were full all the time, no matter where we played in the state. It was a packed house. And the same thing in college. I mean, playing at Purdue and having record crowds and 10,000 fans at every game and sellouts. Our senior year multiple times. It was just I was able to share my career. I always say I was a community project. I didn't grow up in a family that had a lot of money. My parents were barely 18 when I was born, and my community helped not just raise me, but helped fund my ability to play in AAU and go to camps and get recognized and get seen by these college coaches, and literally helped me get to where I am. And I was fortunate that they were able to continue that journey with me collegiately at Purdue. And then when I played for the Fever, and then when I coached with the Fever, I coached that year at Ball State when I started. And so I've been able to share this journey. And it's going to be really cool because we open up the season in Indiana, and to be able to go back and to see those same people and to see my family as I start this new adventure with a different team. So it's just that's been what's been most special about the journey is being able to continue to share with the people who have really helped raise me.
I feel like we're going completely off script on this episode because you keep saying stuff and then we're like, oh, we have to ask this. When was the point where, like, it must have been a culture shock when you arrived to a game or your first game that isn't just completely packed, sold out gym, right? And I'm just curious because we see that so often with like superstar, especially in today's day and age, like with Paige or whatever. I'm from Minnesota and I had friends and family constantly being like, oh my God, have you been following this middle school, high school basketball player who's just balling out of her mind in the neighborhood next door and whatnot? And I'm curious for you, like, was there kind of like a culture shock moment when you got to like some level and it wasn't that same crazy diehard fan base?
Yeah, in a way, particularly collegiately whenever we would play places on the road that didn't have a lot of fans, we would often have more fans than some of the teams did. And it was kind of eye opening that, oh man, it's not really like this everywhere. We were very fortunate. Whether it's it opens my eyes when I talk to players who I played against in college who didn't have the same experience as far as like a tight knit team and shared experience that wasn't the same. And I just it baffles me sometimes. I almost feel sorry for players who didn't play in those kinds of gyms, right? And then certainly coaching, at the collegiate level, coming back and seeing gyms that aren't quite as full, and you know not just the game hasn't just progressed, but life has progressed, and there's a lot more things for people to do. So I know it's a different time. But yeah, it was a little bit shell shocking, a little bit disappointing, somewhat. And then you have to figure out as an athlete how to create your own energy, and that was tough because as an athlete you feed off the crowd. So if we were going to, at the time, Minnesota, who didn't have a lot of fans, oftentimes in their gym, it was like, how do we create our own energy? We've got to find a way to be our best selves and not rely on or use as a crutch the fans in the stands, and whether they're for you or against you. Like, that was the best, right? Like going to Penn State always had great fans, and they were brutal, but it made it fun because there was still that energy that you got.
Hmm. Yeah, and we often hear about players moving from being players to coaches, and like some have success, some struggle with it. I'm always so curious, like for you, what was that transition like, and what were the easy parts and what were the hard parts?
The transition felt natural in terms of the basketball piece. I didn't plan on becoming a coach. And Rachel, ironically, the way it worked out was I was playing for the Fever, and Tracy Roller, who was the head coach at Ball State at the time, was a season ticket holder. And she approached me one day and said, "Hey, I have an opening in my staff, and I just wanted to know if you would be interested." And I said, "You know what? I might." At that time I'd had a couple of surgeries and I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do when I was finished playing. And I said, "But I'm not quite ready to hang up playing." And she was like, "No, it's okay. Like, you can do both. We're just up the road, and all you would miss is summer recruiting." And she's like, I think it would be a really good opportunity for our program, and maybe you would enjoy it." And I'll never forget the first time I stepped on the floor in workouts. It was like I felt like I was home. I felt like this was exactly what I was supposed to do. The way that my mind worked as a player was analytically like it works as a coach, seeing things develop, really studying the game, studying film. I wasn't the most athletic. I didn't jump the highest, wasn't the quickest, didn't have the most natural skill, but I worked. I love the game, and the X's and O's piece came naturally to me. So that transition, that part of that transition was easy. The hard part was learning how to communicate in a way that players understand. It's really difficult, particularly those first few years after playing. You don't understand why players don't see it the way that you do, why they don't approach the game the way that you do, why they don't approach film work or scout or the weight room or workouts in the same way that you do. And it takes some time to figure out that they're not you. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful or disingenuous way. It's natural. And you see that with some players at elite levels now. They expect everyone around them to be the same as them, and it just doesn't happen. So learning how to become a better leader, a better communicator in a way that got the message across clearly, learning how to simplify when you can't take on all of the information, or players couldn't absorb all of the information, and then learning how to game plan in a way that best prepares your team and gives you the best chance to win, because it might not always be the same every year, or it might not always be the same every month if you lose players to injury or you lose players for some reason or another. So those things were difficult. Those things were challenging at the time. They continue to be challenging. And I think as we grow in this profession, and as things change and players change, and the game changes, that's kind of the evolution of success of coaching. You either evolve with it, you pivot, you become better at it, or you don't and you get left behind.
Such great knowledge there. Yeah, phenomenal. Thank you for sharing all of that. And shout out to Tracy Roller. Great person. Love her so much.
Yes.
I didn't know
Yes.
that story, so that's really cool. Um, I think I speak for so many people when I say we're excited to have you back in the WNBA. You've obviously had a lot of time, both collegiately and professionally. We could have a whole episode about the differences, especially when you break down the collegiate game and what that looks like, and the demand of that schedule versus the professional schedule. But I do want to say, what is it about the pro level, the WNBA, that you feel like is such a fit for you, or that resonates with you so much?
I think it's basketball, right? And you've coached in college, so you understand. It's there's so many things that happen with college sports. It's not just basketball. In fact, less than 5% of it is probably basketball. Players have school, and they've got social stuff going on, and they've got demands on their time, and they're adjusting to life, and there's just so many things that are involved that for lack of a better term, are distractions from a basketball standpoint, but are what they have to do to transition to that next phase of their life as a college student.
Right.
We always talked about rookies, and you know what? At least rookies, when they came into the WNBA, had 4 years of life experience. They were 4 years older. They were 4 years more mature. And so for me, just getting back to the basketball is what draws me to the WNBA, and the X's and O's, the thing that I love, the thing that I'm passionate about, the challenge, the chess match with other coaches and other teams, and making adjustments in game, the challenge of preparing a team, and preparing players to be successful, and helping players get that game to that next level, is something that I love. The college dynamic is just, there's just so much, and it's not better, not worse, not anything. It just is what it is. And I think in the days of the transfer portal and NIL, it's becoming even more so. And trying to put together teams and prepare teams and develop individuals is becoming more difficult than ever.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, all right, you're back in the WNBA. It really felt like the last couple of years. It was just a matter of time. Clearly, we've seen a lot of change from the coaching front, different franchises. It was just kind of like, all right, where's Steph going to end up? Is kind of the way I felt in my mind. I know that you were in discussions with other teams, and have been a hot name. But what was it about Connecticut that was so appealing to you?
Yeah, a few things. One, certainly the roster. I mean, this is a franchise that has had great success, really since its inception. But particularly over the last 4 years, Kurt had done an outstanding job putting a team together and preparing them night in and night out and competing for championships. And there was a roster that reminded me a little bit of our teams in Indiana, in that on paper, there were times where you're like, how do they keep winning? But they had that gritty, that toughness, that just ability to put themselves in positions for success and for opportunities for success. And so I like that about the group, and the franchise. I had known many people who have worked and played in the franchise that just raved about the way that they take care of their people, about how much they love having the team, how much they value human beings in the organization. And it's an organization that from day one, from the time the Orlando Miracle became the Connecticut Sun, no matter who was playing, no matter who was coaching, there was a level of success, year in and year out. And that's from Mike Tebow to Ann Donovan, and Kurt continued that as well. I mean, it just, and Lindsay Whalen, the Katie Douglas to Nikisha Sid. I mean, everybody who played in the organization, it just didn't matter, and they were always right there, always in the hunt, always in the conversation. And so it was an organization that I certainly have respected from afar. And then the opportunity to work with this group was just too good to be true.
Rachel and I kept talking about this team, how they were built for long-term success a few years ago. And we all know the history of the Sun, and you just did an amazing job of kind of running down the history of the Sun. So I appreciate that. Perfect segue. Um, but I think it's been kind of clear that a few changes, at least from Rachel and I's perspective, a few changes needed to be made, for them as the team to ascend to that next level, to the ultimate goal, winning championship rings. And so I'm curious for you, like, this isn't about past coaches or anything like that, but just like when you interviewed and were thinking about like, okay, I could be moving into like the helm of this team, what were the changes in your eyes, whether it's style of play or warm up routine or whatever it is? Like, what were the changes that you think you can help this team do so that you can ascend to that goal of winning rings?
Well, I think first and foremost, when you watch this team and look at this team analytically, it's like we needed to get better 3-point shooting. It was one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league. Couldn't clear out space for great interior players, and that's not a knock on players that were there. It was just the way that the team was built, and so needing to get players who could really space the floor, and who can really open things up for a Brianna Jones or an Alyssa Thomas is going to be important, consistently. And I think style of play too. For me, I think that when you have somebody like Alyssa Thomas, who is the ultimate point forward, and the way that she sees the game and the feel that she has for the game, and being able to rebound and go and initiate offense, being able to push in transition is huge. I felt like covering this team in the past, everything on the offensive end, or most things on the offensive end, were very difficult, and they were a amazing defensive team, and always prepared, and always executed at a high level, but it seemed like just struggled to get easy buckets on the offensive end. So I want to be able to open it up. I want to be able to get up and down the floor a little bit more. I want to be able to put players in positions to be successful and get easier shots and higher percentage shots, for our team. And so you'll see a little bit different style, not as much, running plays as hopefully, learning how to make plays, learning how to make each other better, finding ways to get the best shot on the floor and make it a little bit easier, for our team.
So let's run down your free agency. Now that we're kind of through the thick of it, and you can talk a little more openly, you were able to kind of core, maintain Bree Jones, Natisha Heidemann. We talked about Ty Harris. I think you and I were talking about how much we just love Ty Harris and what she brings. Tip Hayes, Olivia Nelson-Ododa. You know, what are your just overall general thoughts? And I mean, go into as much detail as you want about just the free agency you guys just had, and being able to, put the pen to the paper of all the things you just talked about in the roster that you've built.
Yeah, it's a combination of things, and I'm very thankful that I don't have to be a GM and have to worry about not just the combinations but the numbers and all of
Right.
that too. But one of the things I think is really important, particularly in Connecticut, and what I feel like Connecticut has done a really good job of, is have a balance of veterans, of kind of those mid year players who are in the year 3, 4, 5, and rookies. It's a team, and I think it's really important that you develop the players that you draft so that you're not having to start over and rebuild in the draft. Like, this is really the first year that we've seen such movement, such drastic movement in free agency. Typically, you build a WNBA team through the draft, and you're not getting, mostly everybody could offer the same thing that everybody else could, right? And so it was like you're building your team and your franchise through the draft, and once they're done, you're rebuilding through the draft. And so for us, I wanted to make sure that, number one, keeping Brianna Jones was huge. She is a player who, from the time I was covering her in college, to the time that I took the job, it's just, you're in awe of the way that she had continued to improve, and fly under the radar and be so successful. I mean, to be a most improved player, to be a sixth player of the year, to be an all-star, and she hadn't really even been a cornerstone of anything that was going on in the organization on the court. And she's ready for that. She's ready to be that go-to. And so to be able to keep her as really that centerpiece was huge. And she and Alyssa Thomas play really, really well together. So that was big for us. I think Natisha Heidemann is one of the up and coming, really, really good guards in our league. She was playing behind Jazz Thomas, but she had gotten thrown into the fire and led a team to a championship game, to the finals. And, I think for her, just to continue to grow, continue to get better, she was the best 3-point shooter by percentage on the team. Is important to keep her because I think she's a good young talent that we can continue to develop. And I cannot wait until Breon January can work with her every day and help her become an elite guard in our league. So keeping her was really important. I think Ty Harris has the potential to be a really good guard in this league too. And she's been buried, and hasn't really had, much of an opportunity to blossom. And I think that she's ready. And, oftentimes, and we see this a lot in the WNBA and in our league, and we've saw it, from the time this league's inception, is sometimes it's just getting on the right team, like getting around the right people, and you can just flourish. It's not always where you're drafted. It's then finding that next spot that fits. And I think Ty has an opportunity to come in and to be really successful. I love the way that she can run a team. If you can be a point guard on a team that Dawn Staley coaches, you know that you're ready, right? You know that if the best point guard who ever played our game and Dawn Staley trusts you,
Right.
then we should trust you, right? And I think that Ty Harris has the ability to run a team. Obviously she can play off the ball too and knock down shots. I think that's going to be big for us. She can do some things defensively. I think she's an underrated defender, really good in the 2-man game. And so I'm really looking forward to what she can bring. Olivia Nelson-Ododa is a young post player that I think can really develop in our system. And if you're going to play behind Bree Jones and Alyssa Thomas every day in practice, you're going to get better. I also like the fact that she played in a system at Connecticut that utilized their big to facilitate, and we will utilize our bigs to facilitate. She was a great passer in college. She was a great facilitator, and we'll utilize her in this way as well. And she can develop in our system and in our franchise. And I think that she's got great upside, great potential, and a great mind for the game. Now, I think Becca Allen's going to be big for us too. The ability to stretch the floor, be another long player. I mean, we haven't even talked about DB because, obviously we're talking about free agency, but the ability to have DeWanna Bonner and Rebecca Allen on the wing or swinging to the four if we need them to stretch the floor. Can is really going to help us. And I think DeWanna Bonner is a player that we can get her shots. She's at the point of her career, and you see this oftentimes throughout any basketball career where we need to be able to put her in positions to be successful where she can just catch and shoot. She doesn't have to create like she used to have to do, right? Where we can get her in positions where she's coming off of screens and she's getting really good shots, and we've got actions, and she's got players around her who complement her. So I think we've got some really good pieces. We've got a lot of challenge ahead just because there's going to be so much change in how we do things. So I'm thankful that we're going to have a good long camp and a good opportunity to try to put these pieces together.
Well, and you kind of alluded it in terms of just the change in the league overall, the shift. We can't ignore what Las Vegas and New York were able to accomplish this free agency and quote unquote, I guess, this super team era, which is a really popular thing to say right now, but being right on the fringe, right on that outside of it. I mean, I'm listening to you talk and I'm like, okay, wow, like I'm really starting to get excited about this Connecticut roster and the changes that we all knew needed to happen. It was that time. So I'm wondering from your perspective, you're right there. I would say that top 4 tier, in my opinion, in terms of that shift, in terms of what you've seen from these quote unquote super teams, how does that affect your approach going into this season while still building this team, knowing that, okay, the top 2 teams are this team and this team, and how do we match that?
Yeah, I don't think it changes the approach, and I guess I'll use the example of our Indiana Fever teams. I mean, you think about
Perfect segue.
there were quote unquote super teams when you think about the Houston Comets and the Big Three, right? And Minnesota was a dang super team. Now it took them a while to get there. They had a crap ton of number 1 draft picks, right? And then when they were all ready, when they all had matured, they were a super team. And then you had Sylvia Fowles who comes in there, right? So I think about our Indiana Fever teams, and first and foremost, no matter what, to win a championship, you got to have a little bit of luck. I mean, you got to stay injury free. Things have to go the right way. You got to get hot at the right time, like we did the year that we won the championship in Indiana, and we did the year that we went to the finals in 2015. And a lot of things have to go your way. And I think we've seen in the NBA that just because a roster has a lot of great players, it doesn't always mean that you win a championship. And so we prepare in a way that gives us the best chance possible to win. We don't get away from the identity of this franchise in terms of the toughness and the grit and the way that we play, and our ability to just want to outwork our opponent and out execute our opponent every day. And that's what we'll do, and I have a really great staff that we're going to put together game plans that make it tough for every team that we play. And certainly we've got to get creative when it comes to the super teams that you play. And it's about what you look like when you play them at the time that it matters, and taking care of business along the way the rest of the season. And so we'll approach it that way. I think it's, from the outside looking in, it's an exciting time. And I think we knew it was just a matter of time because every league gets to this point. And great players want to play with other great players. I mean, you can't fault players for that, certainly. But at the same time, I think it's a great challenge. And as a competitor, I cannot wait to put these game plans together and go out and compete against. I mean, that's ultimately what we want, is to compete against the best players, the best coaches, and the best teams in the world. And we're going to get a chance to do that.
You segued perfectly, and I was so happy you brought up the Lynx being a super team and you guys defeating them, because like I just think everyone kind of forgets that we've had super teams for a while. And yes, we have social media now. There's a little bit more eyes on all these moves and the makeups of these teams. But like, heck, you could even argue that, Seattle was a super team
Mm-hmm.
or LA was a super team. So I'm just happy that you brought that up. Side note, I was at that series when
Me
y'all took
too.
down the super team.
Oh, I was
Um,
there. I was so there.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this as the younger me who was a diehard Lynx fan was not too happy with you at that point.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're past it. We're past it. It's okay.
You guys got a lot, and then you got us back. So
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
fine. We're fine.
But quickly, like, tell us about your staff. Like, why did you pick them, and what do they add to this team?
yeah, I've been trying to hire Bree on January for 7 years. So I'm thankful that I finally got her, and I hope that I can keep her for a little while. Bree number one was just anybody who has watched her play. I think respects how hard she competes. I think they respect what she gets out of herself every single day. She has been right up there with Tamika Catchings in terms of the hardest workers that I've ever coached. And you can't, you think about the example, you can't underestimate the example that sets for a team. She played with this organization, she played with these players. And so they know how she approaches the game day in and day out. They know how she approaches the weight room. They know how she approaches her diet, her fitness, her nutrition, all of those things. I mean, she's just the ultimate pro. And I also appreciated, my work with Bree when I was coaching her in Indiana. Bree comes in the league as a young player who's just always really fast and really athletic. And so helping her understand how to gear down, how to change speeds, how to play it like a 7 or 8 instead of a 10 plus, how to read the game, how to become a better leader, a better communicator, and then how to trust your shot, right? Because Bree was always the best defender. She was always great in transition. And there were times where she passed up shots because she tried to be the ultimate facilitator. And so I think when we were able to win the championship, not only did she do the outstanding job that she did when we changed her to guarding Simone Augustus, but she had some big shots for this team. Big 3-point shots, which statistically, if you looked at her, was not, the thing that she did. And her and Arlena Larkins playing off the elbow in 2012 and in 2015, they were just really hard to stop. And so I think when you think about Bree, and when I think about Bree, I envision all of those things, and I look at how she'd become a better communicator, a better teacher, her collegiate coaching experience, and really working with young players, learning how to get what as a player out, and help others, again, like that conversation that we had earlier, start to see it the way that you see it. So Bree was obviously somebody that I've always had in the back of my mind, and every time that I've been thinking about a job, I've called her, and I'm just so thankful that it worked out this time. And I think she's going to be a great teacher for our young players, and I think she's going to be a great head coach in our league one day. Abby Olajuwon's a player who I coached in Chicago, brought to camp in Indiana, but I had long respected and admired what Abby did as a collegiate player as well. I mean, she played 3 years behind Courtney Paris, rarely saw the light of day on the floor, yet just kept working, kept grinding, stayed true to the process, so that when Courtney Paris graduated, Abby Olajuwon took over, and she was ready. And that's a true testament, I think, to her character, because lots of players don't want to sit for 3 years just to play the one, right? And she did that, and she was ready. She took advantage every time she was subbed in the game. Even for us with the Sky, same thing. It was like she didn't pout because she didn't get the minutes, and then when she did get the minutes, she took advantage of them. And I always had great respect for her because of that. She's a great human being. She's been a really great college coach, and like a lot of coaches that have coached in college, some of the stuff that's going on, it just kind of wears on them. And we've had conversations over the years about her wanting to get back into the WNBA and wanting to coach in the WNBA, and we had run into each other quite a few times. And she was just a young coach in my mind that I thought is ready to make that jump. I think it's important that we get former players back into this league who want to be in this league, because number one, they understand what the kids. I say kids. They understand what these women are going through. They've been there, right? And we want to give back to this league that has given us so much. And so to have two former players that are ready and willing to do that was important for me. have hired another assistant coach, and it hasn't been announced yet, but it'll be announced soon. In Austin Kelly. Austin worked with me at Vanderbilt for a while, but Austin was always around our Indiana Fever teams. His wife is Karima Christmas, and Austin was always our scout guy, right? Like he was our best scout guy. He was always Elena Deladon. He was always Maya Moore. He was always Candace Parker, Neko Gumake, anybody that we needed him to be. And I worked closely with him because I had him run the scout team. And so we were often, communicating, great basketball mind, great X's and O's, sees things forward thinking the way that I do from a basketball standpoint. And is somebody that I just think is a great coach and is going to continue to be a great coach. In fact, I think Austin, he's somebody that I would have to say if he and I were doing end of game situations together or against each other, they'd probably be pretty similar actions that you would see. So we're very, very similar on that mind. And then we brought in a player development coach too, because I really think it's important for our young players who don't get as many reps and don't get as many minutes to get extra work in. And his name is Keith Porter, and he's based in Connecticut. So our players, when they're there, can get workouts in with him. But I think investing in the player development piece, particularly in our young players, is really important. It's easy to say, oh, they're pros, they got to do it on their own, but it's not like that, And we don't have an off season. They go overseas, and then they come back and they play. And we don't have an off season. So I think implementing a piece that will allow our players to continue to grow, continue to get better, and hopefully help young people and young players in our league have long careers is really important. So I'm thankful to Jen for allowing me to build out the staff the way that we were able to do it. And I'm thankful that we have a great blend of former players and outside perspectives that can help our team be the best that we can be.
Yeah, congratulations to you. That sounds like a phenomenal staff.
Thank you.
So excited to, just kind of see what you guys can do as you kind of ran through everyone for us. I've got one more question before we get into our not so rapid fire questions. We couldn't have Steph White on the show without talking about your broadcasting. I am very vocal. I've raved about you for years and your ability to be on air. You've kind of jumped in and out depending on, whether you were coaching collegially or whatever that might have been. But, you're back, you're broadcasting games. In my opinion, you're one of the best analysts to listen to and have really become that voice for women's college basketball. But I don't know this answer. How did you get this start in doing this? I mean, obviously, it's a natural talent for you. How did you get your start, and can we expect you to continue to do it?
Well, it was just like coaching. I got lucky, and it's really funny because when I was coaching with the Chicago Sky, it was the year that the Big Ten Network started, and a man by the name of Eric Collins, who is now the voice of the Charlotte Hornets, used to call. He was the play-by-play for the Chicago Sky, and I worked for Bo Overton and Steve Key when I was in Chicago, and I always ended up doing the halftime and pregame interviews with Eric Collins. So one day Eric comes up to me and he says, why aren't you in broadcasting? Like, why don't you work in television? And I was like, I don't know. I never really thought about it. Like coaching was just kind of the next thing that happened for me. And he said this network called the Big Ten Network was starting up based in Chicago, and they were looking for former Big Ten players to do the games, like broadcast the games. And he said, I'm going to give you a name. And the name was a guy named Tim Sutton, who used to work for Fox and used to work for Big Ten Network. And he said, I want you to call Tim, and I want you to tell him that I told you to call and see if, you can get an audition. So I said, all right, I might as well. I'm not really doing anything in the off season. I might as well see what this is like. So I called Tim and had a great conversation with him and the late Leon Schweier, who was a Purdue grad who started the Big Ten Network. And, they said, yeah, we'd love to have you on. We'll give you a few games and we'll see how it goes. And a few games turned into about 50 events that year for me.
Wow.
And it literally just grew from there. And, again, right place, right time. So thankful for that opportunity and to be a part of that network from the ground up. Was really awesome. And, continuing to be able to do this is really something that I enjoy. And so, yes, I will continue to do it. I always I always enjoyed number one, just basketball. I just love basketball. So being in the gym is huge. But what I appreciated most about coaching in the W and doing television was as coaches, we often tend to get so tunnel visioned and we get so focused on the minutia. We always are focused on what our teams can't do instead of what our teams can do. And particularly by the end of the season, we go from this wide view to this narrow view. And in broadcasting, it's all wide view, right? So when in the fall, after we'd finished WNBA season, I would go into these gyms and I would be talking to these coaches and I would say, hey, so and so is really playing well and you guys are doing this like really well. And the coaches would say, yeah, but we're not doing this, and this, right? As we all do. And so it gave me a great balance and a great perspective of I could come into the WNBA season with a big picture, sort of macro viewpoint. At the end of the year, I would have a micro viewpoint, and then when I went back into broadcasting, it would widen it again. And so I felt like it gave me a great balance. It gave me great perspective going into each season coaching, and then going into each season broadcasting because I could show the listener the micro view of the details and the X's and O's, and I could remind myself and show the teams that I'm calling the game for the macro view too. So I um I missed that when I was in college coaching. I felt like I was always very tunnel vision in college coaching, and I didn't get the opportunity to have the awareness to get back out and see the big picture.
That's a really cool perspective,
For
and we
sure.
appreciate you sharing that with us. Now for the fun, everyone's highlight, the rapid fire questions. Take all the time you need. Um, First question: what is your pregame meal as a coach or player?
As a player, it was always chicken, potato, a little bit of pasta. And back when I was a player, we didn't have as much information when it came to nutrition as we do now. So, but that was the same thing almost every time. As a coach, here we go. See,
We have a dog appearance. I love it.
but as a coach, I don't really have a pregame meal. I don't have as many superstitions as a coach as I had as a player. So I can pretty much do anything.
What coach are you most excited to go up against?
Oh wow, that's a good question. Um, I don't know if I have one coach that I'm most excited to go up against. Always before it was Lambier. That was always a lot of fun to go up against Bill Lambier. Of course, I grew up watching the Bad Boys, and
Hmm.
that was fun for me. I think certainly probably Cheryl just because of the history that we've shared with Indiana and Minnesota. I think it's gonna be fun to go against Eric Tebow. All the years of coaching against Mike and sort of watching Eric grow up in this league from the time he was a young boy, passing to players in Connecticut to now having his own team. I think that's going to be really fun and really cool. So I guess I would say those two.
Favorite game that you ever coached or played in?
Favorite game that I ever played in was the national championship game. Favorite game I ever coached. Of course, winning the WNBA championship, but the finals in 2015 was really pretty cool. And for those of you who were there,
I was there.
and
I was
you're right. For those of you who were there, remember in Minnesota they had the when the video board would do the countdown and then it would just go black.
there. Hmm.
Yep.
So the moment that we were in Minnesota, I can't remember which game it was in 2015, like the first time that happened, and I was in the head coaching seat. I just remember smiling and thinking, like, this is exactly where you want to be. This is so cool to be in this moment with, all of these fans, and it was so loud. And as soon as that hit zero and the lights went out and the crowd just roared, it was like, this is why you do what you do. Like, this is the fun moment. And so that moment has always stuck with me, and it was so much fun. And even though we didn't come out victorious, it was a special moment for me.
Oh, I just got chills. Okay. Favorite vacation spot?
Anywhere with a beach.
Anywhere. Just anywhere.
Anywhere with a beach,
Okay.
yes. We did take our kids to Jamaica for the first time this year, and they loved it. So being able to share that was their first international trip, and how much they enjoyed it and how much fun we had, playing volleyball together and all of that stuff. That made that a really special trip.
Toughest player that you ever had to guard?
Cheryl Swoops by far.
Ooh, you didn't even hesitate on that one. Wow.
Mm-mm.
That was so quick. I love it. And my personal favorite question to ask, besides Diana Taurasi, who's the biggest trash talker you've played against or seen?
Oh wow. Mm.
Everyone always goes with
Lauren
DT, and I'm
Jackson
like,
was
no, someone else.
Lauren Jackson was pretty good at her trash talking
Really?
too, and
Okay.
yeah, she was. I mean, if we're talking about the number of f bombs dropped between Lauren Jackson and Diana Taurasi, like it's got to be pretty close,
That's amazing. It also makes sense why Sue's good friends with both of them then.
right?
It all makes sense now. It all makes sense. Well, Steph, we are so honored that you took the time out of your day to chat with us and share some of your wisdom. We truly, truly appreciate it. Best of luck during the season. We will be bothering you to come back on again because we enjoyed ourselves. So have a great rest of your day, your week, and we can't wait to see what you cook up with this Connecticut Sun team.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.